Hey guys, today we're going to kind of circle back to Prohibition. We talked about Prohibition already with the Progressive Era, but we didn't talk about how Americans are going to respond to Prohibition. So, just a reminder from the unit before spring break, Prohibition started with the temperance movement. The temperance movement was this push to abolish and end the consumption of alcohol. The temperance movement is going to win their fight, and in 1919, the US government is going to pass the 18th Amendment. The 18th Amendment, or the Prohibition Amendment, is going to prohibit the consumption of alcohol and the sale of alcohol. So, critics of this amendment are going to say that the 18th Amendment is the only amendment up to that point that restricted rather than increased individual rights. All of the amendments before that are saying what rights individuals have that the government can't take away. This amendment is saying what Americans cannot do. So more like a law than the amendments that happened before. So there's going to be some advantages and disadvantages to the era of Prohibition. So looking first at the advantages. So in all fairness, is going to be a decrease during the decade of a decrease in consumption of alcohol during the 1920s. It's really hard to determine exacts of it because they didn't have a lot of surveys going on and polls like we do today. But estimates indicate that during the first few years of Prohibition, alcohol consumption declined to a third of what it was before World War I. So it's going to drop down to a third of what it was before the war. Health records are also going to indicate a decrease in alcoholism and alcohol-related diseases, such as cirrhosis of the liver. So you are seeing societal and health benefits because of Prohibition. We also have this other stat. It could be completely circumstantial, but it's important to point out that family savings are increasing after Prohibition. So the question becomes, are family savings because people aren't spending as much money on alcohol and putting more away? Or is that increase in saving just due to the booming economy that we talked about in the last video? It's not clear whether this is just circumstantial or a causational correlation, but important to just kind of think about the possibility. So disadvantages. We are actually going to see a lot more disadvantages to Prohibition than the advantages that we just talked about. There is going to be a lot of struggles and inconsistency in the enforcement of Prohibition. There's going to be a lot of abuse that's going to happen from individuals, officials who are supposed to enforce Prohibition. So alcohol possession is permitted for medicinal uses, kind of like how when marijuana was first legalized in Colorado, it was for medical marijuana. You're going to see a very similar thing happen, but with liquor. So I'm going to change the slide for a second. Here we go. So here is an old 1920s Prohibition era doctor's page, or doctor's, oh my gosh, words are hard. A prescription pad. I'm sorry, that was difficult. A prescription pad for doctors to prescribe medicinal liquor to a lot of their patients. So you are going to see a shift from just recreational drinking to medicinal drinking. You're going to see production of small amounts permitted for home use. You also see this thing called near beer. It's a manufacturing of beer, but without the alcohol. So alcohol-free beer is going to be allowed. The problem, and where we get this inconsistency of enforcement and loopholes, is that breweries, illegal breweries and distilleries are still going to brew and make their alcohol and like the beer and the liquor, and they will claim that they are removing the alcohol from what they have just created. Officials are going to look the other way and being like, yep, they removed the alcohol, when really these illegal breweries and distilleries are just going to sell their beer and their liquor just as they would have before without actually taking the alcohol off, while giving the officials a payoff. You also see what we call speakeasies becoming a very common thing. Speakeasies are illegal bars that are hidden. So think of movies where you see someone go down a stairway in an alley, they knock on a door and they have to give a secret code, and then it opens up to this large room or this large bar. That is a speakeasy. Speakeasies are going to be hidden back behind stores in random in random basements. You're going to see bars kind of have changed their business for out front. Maybe they're going to change to a grocery store or I don't know, something barbershop, but in the back is where you're going to have the consumption of alcohol. It's going to be you see people flocking to these speakeasies, so they are quote unquote secret bars, but a lot of people are going to know about them and flock to these locations to continue their consumption. There is also a big disadvantage to alcohol being illegal, and that is going to be the lack of regulation. So, because producing and consuming alcohol is illegal, there is no governmental law saying what can or cannot go in to the alcohol being produced. So some alcohol sold on the black market at speakeasies or um, from the mobs we're going to talk about in a second are going to cause nerve damage. They're going to cause blindness. Some of them are going to even cause death because they're able to put anything and everything into this alcohol without regulation. The percent of alcohol is going to be incredibly high, causing all these terrible things to happen. It's going to cause a lot of deaths that and chaos that Prohibition was hoping to avoid. So something else we see come out of the Prohibition era is organized crime. So think gangs, mobs. Al Capone is probably the most famous mobster. But organized crime becomes a major black market industry during Prohibition. So you have crime bosses who now are going to monopolize on the black market of selling alcohol. They're going to sell their products to willing buyers and even intimidate customers to purchase their illegal alcohol. You're going to see this competition for quote unquote turf or turf wars between different mobs and mobsters, and it grows to become this epidemic. Soon, mobs are going to force legitimate businessmen to buy protection to protect them from other organized crime groups. You're going to see city police that are going to take alcohol and cash from these mob bosses like Al Capone. And it's going to be this major problem, especially in your big cities. Think Chicago, New York City. Mobs are going to get it down to a T, an art form, on how they are going to illegally sneak alcohol from one place to another. So here you have what looks like lumber is actually this hideaway to store and transport alcohol from an illegal distillery to consumers and to speakeasies. It's going to become a major, major problem in the cities. And it's all due to this effort to try to stop crime and stop violence. But we actually see this big increase in it in the 1920s.